All right, let's talk about refactoring. So we have this Toy Story code that looks like that. And we got some weird behavior. We're going to try to clean it up. We're going to try to fix it. So first thing I'm going to do is go top to bottom and just get rid of, and just clean up anything that looks hanky. So for example, one of the things I'll do, delete comments. The reason I do that is a comment creates two sources of truth. What are the two sources of truth that a comment gives you?
Who the person who wrote it, they think is going on versus what's actually going on?
Yes. What it does, what you say it does. I don't want that. What I want is for the code to be clear enough that I can read it without having a natural language comment on it. Okay. Fine. I'm really looking for just gross looking stuff. And like among them, I love semicolons as much as the next guy, but use them or don't. Don't go back and forth. Or things like this. This one probably makes more sense as an anonymous fat arrow function. Like that. Yeah. Okay. Nope. And so like, this is another good example where, all right, so we have IMG. No shit, right? So that doesn't actually make the code any clearer. And with something like this, you see how long this function is getting? The fact, like, that's another hint. As soon as you start feeling like you have to explain what's happening because there's so much going on in the function, that's probably too much. And so it would make sense to break those out. Okay. All right. Fine. So with this one, I don't like this indentation here. Really, this chains off of this, so I want to make that more obvious. So we can do something like that, and then like that. The other benefit of that is it prevents this issue that happens in all C-style code, where it's called rightward drift, where your indentation just gets further and further to the right. Okay. I also don't like clever variable names like that. And the reason why is you see res, you don't think of res, you think of response. So you've made your brain do translating when you could have just used 4 extra keystrokes and saved yourself the translation. This one's super cheap, but I like it. Instead of parse int, if you need to make something an integer and you just put a plus in front of it, it does that also. Yeah. What the fuck? Ah! Oh, it's my caps lock went on. There we go. Like that. And honestly, I think it even makes it a little bit easier to read. Some people might disagree, but that coerces it to a number also. Cool. Even though it is required for content type because you're using the dash and it isn't for accept because it's not. If you're going to do it with one, I think it's easier to read if you do it with all of them. Something like this, I'm kind of inclined to throw on one line. And I want to find some way to make those the same variable so I can object shorthanded also. And I can't because this function is called likes. And I can call this likes and it'll shadow this, but that starts getting kind of gross. Really, likes is probably just a bad name for this function. Because something is happening here. It looks like I'm getting likes and adding them and something like that. So I need some verb in here. Then we have this. We call this dead code because it's not running. We don't know what it's supposed to do, etc. Then we have that function call at the end. All right, so that's like my first pass at just cleaning up some cruft. All right, now I want to make sure that I'm not getting any errors. So that's happening when it's trying to parse what? So are you explicitly doing a parse, or are you implicitly doing one with this res.json? Oops. All right, so it's something that's coming back from this that it doesn't like. I'm guessing it's supposed to be that. So I'm running that. And so what I'll do here is, shoot. I think it's saying it can't parse it as JSON. So what I'll probably do is, what tool do I have at my disposal that'll show me what comes back from that? Console log. Oops, and actually, is that even the one that's getting called? Post there, likes, get toys, I'll bet it's that. That's the one that happens at the end, right? No? It's format toys. Get toys gets called at the beginning of format toys. Perfect. So I think this is what's fucking up. Because I'll bet if I do, if I comment that out and just return promise.resolve or something like that. Do I still get the error? Oops. Cool. I'm not getting that JSON parsing error anymore. That tells me it's happening in there. So I'm going to use Postman to do localhost 3000/toys. What do I get back? Cool. Cannot get /toys. And that would make sense because the first thing it's getting back is that opening angle bracket, and it immediately goes, hang on, partner, that's not JSON. Pretty sure that's supposed to do that though. Because it's saying I have a localhost 3000/toys. And if I try to access it, oh, I see what's happening. It's because it's trying to do it at the same server as my light server. That's not good. So I'm going to port 9000 light server. I'll do it there. There we go. All right, no more errors. That's a good place to be. If you watch my other refactoring video, one of the things that, well, shit, I don't have anything after this. You guys want to hang out for a sec? Yeah. Cool, one person does. I was going to say, one of the ways that we can develop some confidence in this without having to like refresh the page every time is we can write some tests for it that will essentially do that automatically for us. Fuck it, I'll do it another time. All right, so that's in good shape. That's fine, that's fine. So next thing that I'm going to do to refactor this, these handlers and callbacks and stuff, I'm going to extract those out into their own functions. So this add btn, is that the only place that is? Add button. Fuck programmer abbreviations.
That actually came really well like that as well.
Good, like the person who wrote that doesn't know what the fuck they're doing.
A lot of the annoying, like a lot of
Oh, I'm recording this. I mean, never mind. It's a handsome genius and
They put like E all over the place, res all over the place, a bunch of abbreviation stuff.
gross. So for the add button, we want to have that. So this function is probably adding a toy, I'm guessing. So is there already, and there's this flag here called add toy. It only gets used there. So, and by the way, this is another refactoring trick, is use whatever tool in your editor to find out everywhere something's used. This is the only place add toy exists, is these 4 places. That gives me a lot more confidence that I can change those without breaking something else. And anytime you're, this is called a flag. Anytime you're setting something to true or false, and then you like toggle it and that kind of stuff, it's called a flag. And so this line here is toggling the flag. And one of the ways that, instead of calling that add toy, I'd probably call that something like is adding. And change that all of those places. That reads a little bit more naturally and also has the side benefit of letting me name this function add toy because it's actually doing something. And I should be able to take all of that, copy and paste it in, and just say add toy. And add toy takes in the event. Cool. So then there's another one in here. Gross. So while I'm wrestling with this, let's make sure this works. If I do that, toy's name is barbell. You know, like kids play with. Look at that kid. He's having a great time. He's just jumping. So I grab barbell, image URL, create a new toy. Toydata.image is undefined. All right.
Does it matter that your E and event, you kind of like swap them back and forth?
No, it's because this is the event handler for that.
Okay.
And we're going to fix that problem in a second. So toydata.image. All right, and that came in from create new toy, which was supposed to be in event.target, which was this E. Yeah, I see what you're saying. All right. Barbell. Did it do it? Yes, it did. Okay. So that works. So I'm going to do the same thing inside this one. Although, So I'm not quite sure what the difference between these two things is. So I'm going to make a similar sounding name, and then I'm going to try to clean up the names next. So I'll say create toy, and one of the things it does is create new toy. And it takes in an event and does these things. That's event, and that's event, and this is create toy. Cool. All right, this is starting to make more sense. So I'll refresh this and restart the database too. Oh, it kept it. I wasn't expecting that. All right, and there's A. Perfect. So still working. That's the important part. All right, so now, see this add toy function is getting progressively easier to read and like understand what it's doing. So every time we call add toy, it toggles the flag. In fact, let's make a function for that. Toggle adding. And then we can move that into here and say toggle adding. Same thing, but code's starting to read a little more semantically. And, oh shit, we can even do better than that. So when you see this kind of thing, you're saying if this, do these things, otherwise do this. That's a good use case for a ternary. Now the tricky thing, oh, interesting. So this is doing two things. This is toggling the display and it's adding the event listener. And what's interesting about that to me is these really don't have anything to do with each other directly. So I'll bet we can tease out that logic. For example, I could just as easily take that out and then do something like is adding But the thing I just aha'd about, when you're in adding mode, the thing that's happening is it adds the event listener. And it also toggles the display of it. No, what we want to do is we want the toy form to always have this submit listener. It's just sometimes you can or can't access the form. That's a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to say we can just move this up to the top so that toy form always has that. Because here's the other thing. If that's in the toggle block, what happens when we've toggled that a few times? Yeah, now it has 3 submit listeners and it'll add it 3 times. Probably don't want that either. So now we've got this, which is toggling this display thing, really toggle adding. Shut up. I'm getting woofed. Hang on. There we go. You can really move this down to here, because that's like the core thing that toggle adding is doing. And now, all add toy does is call this. So that lets us know that add toy doesn't actually matter anymore. And so that add button doesn't add the toy. What it does is toggle adding. So now that first part of the app is refactored. Much cleaner. Questions about how we did these first few lines? oh shit, you know what else I can do? I can do that ternary. That also cleans it up. So I can say is adding, and if it's true, do that. Otherwise, do that. Hey now. Actually, I don't know if it'll let me do the assignment in there. Oh, it will. Cool. And I was going to say, there actually might be a way to further condense that down. Fuck it, that's actually pretty clean. Neat. Let's keep going. So now this create toy, now we don't have that name conflict anymore. So I can call that add toy. But then create new toy. So the thing that I like about this is that create new toy is a separate function that's not dependent on being part of a form submission. Because like there's other ways you could do that. Maybe you pull in a bunch of JSON data and you need to create toys for all of them. So you're not always going to have an event to prevent default on. But that means that this doesn't just add a toy. This function really is just for forms. So I want a name that kind of reflects that. So I'm going to call that new add toy form handler. I don't like the word handler. You'll see if I can find a way to fix that later. Add toy form handler. You know what? I'm going to re-inline this. That makes it so I don't have to come up with a name. And since we're down to 2 lines now, that works a lot better. Beautiful. Okay, that's good. That's good. I'm going to say, let's move that parse JSON into a function too. So it takes in a response and returns response.json. Then in this, parse JSON. And now, put that on 1 line. That reads pretty good. Now, a problem we're going to have is that this is hard-coded, so we can't deploy it. We're not actually going to fix that problem today, but we are going to pull that out into an outside variable like that. Say toys URL, and then in here we'll say toys URL. Nice thing about this is I can now do something you might imagine like if is in production, or better, toys URL equals is in production, and if so, realapi.com/toys. Otherwise, we're in development, so we can do localhost. And the function that's using toys URL doesn't give a shit. The actual way that we get is in production is more complicated, so don't worry about it. But that's a good reason to try to extract out that URL into a variable. All right, so get toys is looking a little better now. Craft toys. So this has the shape of something that is usually called a God method, a mega method, or a monolith. And it just basically points to a big function that kind of does all the things. And so we're going to want to find some way to break that up. But first, I'm going to look for some other low-hanging fruit. Like this one. This one can get more clear. So I like what's happening here. I don't like the format of it, so I'm going to play with it a little bit. What happens if I do that, that, and that, and that? That doesn't actually look any better. This one maybe should be one line. That's better. And, ooh, cool opportunity. Anytime you see this shape where I have this part of a fat arrow and all I do is pass it into another function, watch this shit. We can delete that and delete that. Because that's all that does. It takes a function definition and then calls it with that. So this is starting to look better. I'll bet that'll also look better if it's all on one line. Yeah, that's getting better. Yeah, I like that. For now, at least. Okay, I have that parse JSON function I can do there. This, who can tell me what's wrong with this?
You don't do anything with added toy?
Yep. So let scopes added toy to this block, and then we never do anything with it. So that does the same thing. Another way to write that would be like that. And was anybody paying attention in the last thing that I did? What can I do? Just call craft toys. Nice. And you can start to see how this starts reading a lot more literate. Fetch this stuff, then parse it, and then craft toys with it. So this one up here, we said it was toys URL. You could bust this out, all of these things, into something separate. Sometimes that cleans it up a little bit. I'm going to leave that for now. Okay. Let's say that is toys URL. This is parse JSON. This should, whatever this is, should absolutely be a separate function. Okay. So I'm going to go back up to the top. So I got some low-hanging fruit in there. Let's start digging into this craft toys thing. So what it's doing is it makes a div, sets an ID on it, sets an attribute on it, then does that with an H1, then does that with an image, then does that with a paragraph, then does that with a button, and then takes the div and appends each of those. So I have an idea of what Jerbear was trying to do here. And I think I got a smoother way to do it. It's it'll look like cheating, and it kind of is. Also, is that spelled right? Collection has 2 L's. Okay, and I checked. It's only in those 2 places, so I didn't break anything else by changing it. So instead of all this manual DOM manipulation, you guys are gonna barf. Check this shit out. So I can say div.inner HTML equals, and then, all right, I need an H1 with toy name. It is sick, isn't it?
You need those backticks for the
Yep. So now I don't need that one. That needs an image. Source is, oh, yeah. Toy.image. Oh yeah, and we can just do, since this isn't a variable, we can just do toy.name. Don't need the brace. That reads a little bit nicer. And also, this is literally the least you can do for accessibility. Put in alt tags, even in your fake Flatiron code. Toy.name. What is the thing a picture of? Okay, and then we need a P. That has toy.likes, likes, and then we need a button that has a class called LikeBTN and an inner text of like, heart, and then, cool. And then it needs an event listener for that. That's a little bit trickier, but we'll get there. We don't need to do all of this. And, oh baby, is that cleaning up a little bit now? Still don't love that I have to do the ID and set attribute. I also don't like using set attribute for class. There's a better way to do that. DOM add class. It's like classes.add or something. Yeah, class list. Yeah, class list.add. There we go. div.classlist.add. That's safer in a lot of circumstances, because if it has other classes that we want to keep for whatever reason, we don't want to blow those out by setting the attribute, because that doesn't overwrite it. And even though we're not, this reads a lot more semantic. Okay. I sort of want to pull that out into a function too. So like create toy card. And maybe it does that and returns div. And then I can say create toy card But then I'm going to need that. All right. So I'll do div. All right, I like that a little bit better. And then, all right. So now what to do about this click listener? So one way we could handle this, the challenge is that we're adding a click listener for every one of these that we make. So one way we could do this, I don't know if you've figured this out yet, but document isn't the only thing we can do query selector on. We can also do it on any element. So we can do div.querySelector button and get back the button. And then do add event listener click event that. And since we're just passing the event in, we can just say likes. And that line is getting a little bit long, so that's a good sign to break that up. I still don't like that. One, now I get what this is doing now, and I don't think that's a good name for the function. Two, I'm making a separate event listener for each one of these, and there's a more elegant way to solve that. Anybody know what it is? It has a standard. I wrote it on the standard site and everything. You probably don't know what it is or how to do it yet, but you've at least seen the word. Event delegation. So event delegation is the idea that whatever this list we're building out is, we add one event listener to that, and when it gets a like event, it figures out what it needs to call it on. That's sort of the trick. But we've done a lot of stuff. I need to make sure that the site still works. Okay, it's loading up there all right. I can add a new toy. I can make it go away. Toy's name is B the barbell. And this is exactly why we need to check this shit. So on line 66, I screwed something up. I see what I did. Lowercase a bunch of stuff. Cool. B. All right. Living and rocking. So, and then I should be able to like one of these two. All right. There's an issue with that. And all that's happening in here.
Toys R Us should wrap the template.
Yes, it should. Good call. Good catch. All right. Nan likes. Nan does like it. See if there's something that barfed at with my coercion. What's new likes? Nan comes out of that. So now let's say, what is event.target. Well, what's event? Let's start there. Okay. It was a click. Darn tootin'. What was its target? The bootin'. And then previous element sibling was the P. Oh, I see what it is. Anybody else catch it? Why is the inner text of that not coercible to a number? The inner text of it is 0 likes,
Instead of just being 0.
not just 0. So I'm going to say that rather than reading that out of the text, that feels pretty damn brittle to me. So what I actually want to do is I could look up the likes, like based on their ID. I could also store it on the element. I saw some of you doing that recently. That's kind of a clever way to do it. So I could do something like data-likes equals toy.likes. So when you do data dash, whatever you put after that, that's a way to store data on an element. It's not necessarily being displayed, but
You need an L.
yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't. Sykes. Ike. So, yeah, that's nice. So now over in like land, previous element sibling, I can do data set. Oh, just data? No. DOM data attributes. Data set with a lowercase s. There we go. Knew it was in the ballpark. So now I've got this object-like thing that's keeping that shit for me. So if I do dataset.likes, that gives me a numero. So how about I do previous element sibling dot dataset dot likes. Let's see what I get there.
You get two periods there.
Okay. I like you, B. You like me too. Oh, weird. It won't let me do it more than one time. Maybe that's intentional. All right. So,
Maybe because you're not updating the data set.
oh, that's entirely possible. So now I kind of want to take a look at that likes thing. I still don't like that name. It's adding a click listener, and really what it's doing is adding a like. I'm going to call that add like. And this does have an event, but we don't actually need to prevent its default. Anybody know why?
It's not a submit.
It's not a submit. Its default behavior is absolutely fine. And now likes, new likes. Now, I told you I'd get there. I can make that, and now I can make that. Knew there was a way to do it. And then change it down here. And then this, I'm not actually using. So I'm probably better off, indicating that I'm not using it by not including it. All right, next thing I don't like in this is this, like, that element is kind of gnarly. Event.target.previous element sibling. Yeah, it works. I don't want to type that out both times. So one way I could do that is const p equals, and then grab all that. And then that doesn't actually get reassigned anywhere, so that can be a const. And now this can be p, and so can that. This is purely a preference thing, but I like text content more than inner text. Okay, that's starting to get a little bit better.
Do you still need the plus for the P on const likes?
Probably not actually, but let's see. Yes. Can anybody tell what happened there? Why it says 0, 1? String what?
Did it convert it?
But you didn't do that, plus.
I didn't, but why did it specifically give me this result?
Appending it?
Yeah, string concatenation. So if I coerce that, then it works. Okay, that's getting better. This looks like a ripe candidate for its own function. So I can make a function called render likes that takes an element and a like count. Maybe does element.textContent is like count likes. And then this becomes render likes. Oh, shoot. But I need to... this might actually not be clear. Since I need to pass things into this, then it takes a function definition. So if I do this, what does... I've invoked it now. What does that return?
It'll return whatever the output of the function is, so undefined. Right?
Undefined. Undefined is not a function definition. So when it hits that line, it's going to error out. There is a way around this. This will become real handy to know in Mod 4. All we need to do is wrap that in an anonymous function and return it. Yeah, it's fucking wild. Actually, I don't even think I need those. And I'll bet that works. Nope, element is not defined. Oh, it's because it's not called element here. Like count is not defined. It's because it's called likes here. There we go. All right, all right. So add like, I'm more fond of that function now. And create new toy. Craft toys feels like a pretty precious name for this function. So I'll look at what this actually does. What it does is it creates a toy and adds it to the toy collection. So create toy card. I'm going to call this new toy card. Because all it does is give me a blank one. Let me give it a better verb. Create new toy card. And then I think I want to split the creation of this toy card out from adding it to the DOM. So a good hint in refactoring when something needs to be two functions is if you would use the word and in describing it. Makes a new toy card and adds it to the DOM. That's two different things. So I'm going to call that build toy card. Build toy card, and it does all of these things and returns the div. All right, so what does it need to do that? It needs a toy. That makes sense. And so then this one becomes build toy card. Build toy card toy. I like that a lot more. Yeah, so now this feels like it has one and only one purpose to it. And that builds it, adds it to the DOM. But all of the logic to do this is abstracted out. Now that feels like that could be one line. All right, getting down to it. So one of the things I'll do is like these mega utility kinds of things, like parse JSON, throw those down at the bottom. And since we're using declared functions for everything, we can take advantage of hoisting. That like format toys function, that's the action. That's what the app actually does. And so I'm going to put that up first. And I'm also going to, where is it? Format toys. I'm going to make the definition of that come up a little bit. I'm going to kind of work backwards from there. Get toys should probably be next. Craft toys, I changed the name of that to, no, it's still called craft toys. I call this render toy. Yeah. Okay, that reads a lot better now. Also going to return this because this is a promise chain. And so for whatever reason, somewhere down the road, I end up needing to chain behavior off of this. I'm returning this promise chain so I can dot then off of that. Okay. Get toys, and then render toy should probably be the next thing. I'm going to say that parse JSON is too obvious to need to be up front. I can keep that down at the bottom. Toy collection, prepend, build toy card. So how about I raise this one up? Okay. Create new toy card. This is something that I don't see a lot of people do this, but I kind of like it. The only place you would ever use this function is inside of this. So I like to keep the definitions of those inside of those functions also. I can see why somebody wouldn't like that pattern, but I like it. So it lets me know if I ever change this, so I delete it, I just automatically know I also don't need that little helper function. Okay. And then create new toy and add like, and then render likes. Render likes is another one of those, like maybe it makes sense to keep this in here. This toggle adding, I'm going to add this down to the bottom also. And I'm going to change the name of this to is adding this probably is better off as toggle form display. And that toggle form display, I like that better. A thing that I also like, where does this get used? Just there. Sometimes I'll do, instead of just having a variable for every element, I think it makes some sense to keep them all together. So sometimes I'll do something like this. And then where I had add button, that becomes elements.add button. Or I'll do you one better. Sometimes I just call this $. So now I have $, add button. And was that the only place I have it? It is. What about toy form? And $.toy form. And then, okay, is that all of them? Yep. Then toy collection, it's $.toy collection, and that's all of them. But that gives me some sense that these belong together. I'm going to put this up with here because it's also initialization. These event listeners have click and submit. That's pretty good. And then I send this all into action. Okay, so format toys, that's really like render toys. Does that get called anywhere else? No. Okay. And okay, last thing that I want to do to clean this up that's still big. All right. Is I want to try that event delegation. So to do that, I'm going to take a look at the HTML file. And all right, it goes in toy collection. Perfect. What I'm going to do is get that. I have the toy collection thing right there, and so I can add $toy collection, add event listener for click, and then to do the actual event delegation, we need to do a little bit of magic. Because what's going to happen is toy collection is huge. That's almost the entire page. And if we click anywhere in it, it's going to fire this event. So what we need to do is only do this for like increasingly narrow things. For example, button clicks. So let's start by, so I click here, that's a click event. I click over here, that's a click event. I click the button, also a click event. So what I want to do is like, all right, well, how can I start narrowing this down so I don't do it with every fucking click? So one is I can take a look at the target for it. I can say if target tag name, all right, is button. I can say if event.target.tagname equals button, then do something. So if I did this right, it's only going to fire that log this event when I click on the button. So I'm clicking here, I'm clicking here, I'm clicking here, I'm clicking here, and I'm clicking there. All right, narrow it down a little bit. So the next thing that I want to do is, all right, it'll fire that thing for any button. So I need to know which button I clicked. So let's look at how I'm building that. All right, all right. What if I do, these have IDs? Yes. So let's say I keep track of the ID of that button on here with toy.id. So now I was able to log event.target.dataset.id, and I should get 16 when I click on that one, 15 when I click on that one. Hot damn. Getting one step closer. So the thing that I actually want to happen is I want to like do the whole click business or the like business. So when I add the like, which I do through this. Now this one gets a little bit tricky because it's looking for an event right now, and that's probably not what we want to give it. Well, yeah, that's not how we want to do this. We want to give it like an element and have it kind of run from there. So right now it needs the p tag, and does it need anything else? Fuck yeah. Really just needs the p tag, and yeah, because it renders it in there also. Fine. So and does event get used anywhere else in here? For the ID also. So it needs an ID and the p tag that kind of goes along with that. So I'll bet, since we're storing this ID on here, check this shit out. I can get the p tag by doing document.querySelector p. I need the thing with $. What was that? How do I store it up here? The ID is event.target.dataset.id. So the p tag that's inside the thing with ID, that should give me the p. I have the ID. So then I can do that add like function, give it the ID and the paragraph tag, and now I just change. Instead of this, I don't need that event listener anymore. And to add a like, this doesn't take the event anymore. It takes a p tag and the ID. So I don't need that anymore. I do need that. This is just ID now. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Cool. See if it still works. Do you love me? I don't love me. Oh, weird. Not a valid selector. Can numbers not be IDs? That did strike me as kind of strange. Let's see. Oh, where's the number? Is it just on that button? Ugh, that's fucking weird. So let's do this. When we're making those elements, let's give it a data ID. So we did build toy card. Ah, I see. So we'll do div.dataset. Let's see, I need to be able to. Oh, weird. I got it. It's when I'm building that out. I'll put data dash ID there. Do toy.id. Thinker, this one. And now I can even simplify that further and say, just give me the thing that matches that ID. Ruby. There we go. And since that's all I'm doing, I could even just, oh, I actually need the hash. That's right. All right. Moment of truth. Do you love me? You don't love me? Oh, because it is actually a something with the attribute of data ID. Let's see, data ID, the ID. Yeah, let's try that. P is null. All right, where's P? It's from add like. So let me get an idea of what I got here. So I click on that. Undefined and null. I don't like that at all. Good gravy. So let's try this. All right, so I'm getting that bootin. And the data set on that bootin. Oh, I see what's happening. Now that I did want to put there and there. All right, I'm a dummy. So I test that. All right, I'm getting 16. Now the paragraph is just null. That's a little bit easier. Let me try that. Not a valid selector. Fuck. So what I'm going to say is CSS query by data value. Yeah. So we want the paragraph with the data ID of that. I think we have to wrap it in quotes actually. All right, now let's see what we got. All right, P tag. Do you love me? Do you love me? Okay, so that stays. I like you too. I like you too. So the cool thing about that, one event listener. Pretty baller. All right, so top to bottom, cool, cool, cool. So all my event listeners are in one place. I like that. In fact, I could even wrap those in a function called like attach event listeners. And throw that all the way down at the bottom. And now render toys, I'll just say okay, so that's really what the app is doing right there. And then let me look for other hanky shit in here. Good, 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 good. I don't like this anymore. Makes that function too long. Add that there. Since I'm using the dollar signs, let's stay consistent. Good. Good. Yeah, that one makes that one too long too. Good, 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 good. That is how I would refactor that code. So let's debrief a little bit as a group. What did you learn from that?
Skip each function when purpose.
Indeed.
So that it learns whenever.
Now, I'll highlight too, you don't have to write it that way. Write it however the fuck you want. There's nothing wrong with the way that Jeremiah wrote this code. It's the next step. Then you clean this up. Then you find the little abstractions. Then you find the shared logic. If you try to start with this, you'll drive yourself insane. Like, I couldn't write this to start with. Get it working. Keep it green. Then just keep it green, keep it green, keep it green as you're doing this. So much easier. Cool. What else? Yeah.
Explicitly mean things and everything.
Everything. And if you can't come up with a good name for something, that's a good case for anonymous functions. Like this thing here, I couldn't do any better than like form submission handler. They're like things like data handler, CB for callback. If you're naming it something like that, you don't know what the fuck it does. And so I'd so much rather you use an anonymous function for that than come up with a name that isn't accurate or not descriptive. Because you know what? That's not descriptive either. And it's a lot less characters to not be descriptive with. Other things you learned?
It was one of your fetches in the body where your key and value have the same like name, but if you do that, just have like the one thing in there.
Yep.
So,
That's called object shorthand. So it's this one. So yeah, if your key and value have the same thing, you can just put it once like this. And that doesn't have to be, everything in the object doesn't need to be like that. We could do, if we do A like that, that's the same as doing A as A. But we could also do, in that same object, B is C. But yeah, if it doesn't have a colon on it, JavaScript's going to assume that the key and value are the same thing. Object shorthand. It's new-ish. 4 years old. Cool. What else did you learn? Yeah, Kat.
If you want to pass arguments into a function, but you don't want to call it, you can just return that function.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. This is going to save your bacon in React at some point, I promise you. Because there's a lot of things in React that work the same way, where they expect a function definition. Like, but I need more than just the one thing, or I have some kind of complicated use case. For example, map. If you have a map function that needs the thing you're iterating over plus another thing, really common way to do that is you put the extra thing that you're passing in there, and then the item from each iteration there. You're going to call renderLikes invoke with whatever extra thing you're going to pass in. This is the thing that gets passed to the map. So it's going to invoke that every time, and there's your item from each iteration. But you also have access to that extra thing every time. That's probably like about as advanced JavaScript pattern as like we do in this program. So if you want to know what the end of the rainbow with JavaScript looks like, for us at least, it's probably that. And that's where, like, you may have noticed we haven't done a whole lot of math in the program. That's where it starts bending back into the math world. Because if you did any calculus, that's calculus. Functions that return other functions that return other functions. That's what that is. It's even notated the same way. Lambda calculus. Hey, what do you know? It's a fat arrow. What else did you learn? Did we learn anything else? I typed so much.
The building of if else statement only has those one or the other options. Ternary is probably a better move.
Yeah. I think that reads a lot better than the if else. There are people who disagree with me though, and they have a point. And the point is words scan quicker than symbols do. So even though this is just an if else, there is an argument to be made for the symbol being slower to scan than the words if and else.
Like humans scan, like reading?
Correct.
Okay.
Code is, and like this is a common misperception with code. Nobody reads code. I don't read code. You scan it. You look for things that stand out. You look for what looks like might be a problem that causes this kind of error. And so you want to write your code to scan quickly, not read well. And so that's fair. The point where that breaks is stuff that you do often. The plus symbol scans quicker than the word add because you use it so much. I would argue the same thing is true of ternaries. But since you guys are new at this, you don't use these as often as you use ifs and elses. So that's where the tension in that exists. Okay, 2 more things you learned from this.
Inner HTML.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That hack is delightful. That's a whole lot of document.create elements that we didn't have to fucking do. So it only works. Inner HTML only exists on elements, so you need to create the element first. That sort of sucks. But yeah, this is practically cheating. And other cool thing about this is React, Ember, Angular. It's all essentially this. This is templating. It's kind of like ERB.
Do you favor that over like creating like a dictionary instead?
this case. Now that I'm looking at this, one thing that I would change about it is I would destructure out those variables. So I'd take name, image, ID, and likes out of toy. And now that's a lot better.
How does that line work?
Sure. This is called destructuring. It's also kind of new. That is the same as doing const name equals toy.name, and image is toy.image, and so on.
So as long as it's gonna be the same name as one, right?
Exactly. If I want to take values out of this object and store them as variables with the same names as the keys, I can destructure it like this. It's just another way to reduce repetition, so I don't have to write toy dot over and over and over again. Cool. One more thing you learned.
Structuring your code to follow kind of the path.
Yeah.
Reading it.
That's another one that I can kind of like smell beginner code that way. It doesn't need to be the same way that I did it, but it should have some logic to it. But hopefully, like, it wasn't just that. There was a lot of things that, like, you saw me sweat over that were just like what order things happen in, where things get included. They don't change the logic at all. But code spends a lot more time being read than it ever spends being written. And so we should optimize for scanning the code. And what order these things happen in is a big part of that.
Sorry, one more thing I noticed.
Yeah.
That I just thought about was kind of you made sure you looked at the whole picture before you stopped at that one thing. You're like,
Mhm.
oh, that's ugly.
Yeah.
And started you saw everything before you found what you were going to kind of dig into.
Yes. And you may have also remembered, I had like 3 functions that had almost identical names at some point. You can make it uglier before it gets better. Just try to keep it contained to like a screen's worth. Something that you can, that's enough that you can keep the whole thing in your head while you're working on it. And then don't leave it that way, because then you'll have made the code worse. It's like anti-refactoring. But yeah, as you're trying to tease those things out, you don't have to have the answers right away. You just need to sort of tease those things out. And most of the time, the answer will sort of start materializing as you wrestle with it. Because yeah, I think in that one, it was the case that there was a function that when you got right down to it, didn't do anything but call another function. So that's the thing you're trying to figure out. Cool. Any other questions about refactoring, the refactoring process, anything like that?
Share that with us so that we can compare, because I have a much earlier version of that, and it'd be interesting to
Yeah, no
take a
problem.
lap at looking through it.
Absolutely. Let's see. Oh. Good. I don't know if you guys ever have figured this out. If you just type git commit, you may have done that by accident once and ended up here. No, what's happening? Our commit messages don't need to be stupid little one-liners. You can write all of the documentation for your commit here. So you could say, things changed in this commit. We refactored Jeremiah's code. We talked about the good and the true. And the real refactoring was the friends he made along the way. So we can do something like that. Like Linux's commits are pages long, but there's no other documentation site. It's just through the commits. So you can do that, and even if you don't know anything about Vim, you do capital ZZ, and it does the commit. Just a thing you can do. All right, and then go over here and make a new repo. This was Toy Tail refactor. And public. Get remote add origin. Get push origin master. All right, it's Kyle Coberly / Toy Tail refactor. And if you look over here, look, it even kept the markdown formatting. So that's bigger because I wrote it like a heading. Pretty cool. Awesome. Anything else we should talk about?
How often is it that you are spending time refactoring code versus writing it, like in job role?
Half and half. Like, the easiest way, and this is, when you work on your projects, this is the thing that fucks you up, is you spend 4 days writing code and then you refactor. That's the problem. Like, that's rough. That's really hard to do. If you do like 10, 15 minutes and then clean it up, 20 minutes, clean it up. If you're cleaning up as you go, there's so many problems you avoid because you've been thinking so much about the relationships between these things and not leaving any like burrs in your clothes that get hooked on the door while you're walking away and start unraveling your shirt. So yeah, I spend about as much time refactoring as I do writing. Anything else? Thank you very much.